Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you're all having a good Labor Day weekend. I just thought I would take this opportunity to sort of respond to a request that I got to talk a little bit about how I use objects now. But as I was starting to think about how am I going to talk about that, I decided that I might as well just do like an overview of kind of like my development journey so far. Coming to making games as an artist and writer first, just sort of breaking into game development without any computer science or programming training. So going into my development journey, I have a background in art, animation, and making graphic novels and webcomics. I was good at using Photoshop. I understand how to create digital art as far as I don't know the basics, like just raster graphics versus vector graphics, file types and sizes and resolution and things like that. Character design, and I also have experience in writing stories from beginning to end and being published on a small scale. So I have a good understanding of that aspect of my workflow. I know how to tackle long projects that are very, for lack of a better word, just require a lot of time to create. A lot of it can be very monotonous. Years in the making. And I've had success in finishing those types of projects, so I know what type of tenacity, I guess, and discipline and all that, and I know that I have kind of that drive inside me, because I don't know that every personality type on the planet really has that drive to create these types of just very long-term and complex kind of projects. Starting from beginning to end. It just takes a lot of commitment, and not everybody is that into it, and that's totally fine. But I know I have that kind of just, I guess, innate spark inside me to to just want to keep going at these things with an almost obsessive level of commitment. So yeah. That's me. Before I started game development, this was me. Year one, I worked on Soul Union. I tried a couple different game engines. So I did try RenPy, and I'm trying to remember, I tried like 3 other engines, I think, including Unity with a couple different assets that were supposed to make things easier. And then I ended up settling back into RenPy. So there was a lot of little bit of experimentation at first. It was also a year of just learning very basic things, the general I guess I think of as markup language, just display type commands, how to get things to display, how to do jump statements and stuff, labels, how to name files in a way that you can find them, how to use just basic variables and condition checks to direct the flow of the story, a very simple inventory list that I didn't really understand what I was doing with it, other than I eventually got it to sort of work. And very simple screens for displaying a map and stats and inventory. And again, didn't really understand what I was doing, but just kind of flubbed through tutorials until I got something working. Yeah, that was my first game. And besides learning how to program those things in RenPy, I also was learning how to vector animate, because I come from a traditional frame-by-frame hand-drawn kind of animation background. So I was learning how to vector animate with a kind of like puppeting and using deformation, kind of like to animate, and was learning how to do that in Anime Effects. I did also learn, what is it, Cubism, Live 2D. I did dabble with that, and I did a couple like test sprites, but in the end I just decided to settle on Anime Effects, so I don't really remember too well how to use that program now, other than I did get working animations in Live 2D. At the time, RenPy did not support Live 2D though, so that's kind of why I went with Anime Effects, and then I had to learn a little bit about using FFmpeg in order to convert those files that I made in Anime Effects to WebMs and the alpha masks. Learned how to use Procreate, because beforehand, when I was just using Photoshop, I wasn't able to ink digitally. I was still inking traditionally by hand, and then scanning in my drawings and cleaning them up, and then coloring them digitally. So I moved to a fully digital workflow with Procreate, and learned very simple sound editing in Audacity. I still wouldn't say I'm super comfortable using that program. It's just learning enough to get what I needed out of these things. Year 2 was when I was working on Soul Labyrinth, and I've transmigrated as a Supreme Villainess, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And during this year, I would say that I was learning a little bit about collaboration, because I joined my first game jam, and I was leading that project, and I was working with another programmer and an artist and an editor. I wouldn't say that I did the best job with leading that project, but we did get a demo finished, so that was good. From working with the programmer, I learned kind of basics about objects, but she was really the one who created all the functions for that game. So I really just had a vague understanding of what she was doing, just enough to kind of copy her scripts, but I didn't understand them enough to kind of create my own. Used a lot more screens for the kind of point and click gameplay that was in Soul Labyrinth, so I learned a lot more about making screens and how to interact with them, so I just a lot more practice with that, which also led to using a lot more transform effects, a lot more kind of action, taking actions when you're clicking on things. Whoops, cat, move out of the way. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, whenever I have a huge bug that I don't remember making, I just blame the cat for stepping on my keyboard. Worked with condition switches with the sprites. Was working with call statements, because I didn't really understand when I was working on Soul Union the difference between jump and call statements, how to really I guess take advantage of that. So I was working with a lot more call statements on these projects. My file and directory organization made a little bit more sense. I was getting better at that, and I was starting to incorporate randomization just within the gameplay, especially in the parody game. Year 3, I was working on Hungry and the first draft of Arcane Dice Wars. So I was really wanting to incorporate a combat system into my games, and I was focusing more on visuals, trying to create a little bit more diversity in the visuals, something a little bit more visually interesting. Hungry was a very art-heavy project. It took a lot out of me, which is why I discontinued it after the demo, because it just wasn't as much fun to work on as I wanted to. I think it was giving me flashback trauma from my cartooning days. I was working more with objects, because I had sort of kind of started to see what objects could maybe do from working with that other programmer on Soul Labyrinth. But I still didn't really understand how to use objects other than to kind of better organize variables, because the variables were all just becoming too many variables. Were just kind of getting out of control. So I saw objects as a way of kind of like organizing those variables better. And not having so many variables, but I was kind of just using them as like placeholders for variables. Started making reusable systems with the combat systems, so just kind of like rerunning scripts until they meet certain conditions to move on to the next script. Started making some basic functions on my own, and started collaborating more with some friends with adding some limited voice acting in Arcane Dice Wars. Okay, which brings me to year 4, where I guess technically Villain's Heart was maybe because that kind of bridging the gap between these two, year 3 and year 4. And then there was the remake of the current project that I'm working on, Arcane Dice Wars. And then there was Arcane Dice Wars Gacha Date that I did for my brain is so slow right now, that I did for Otome Jam this year. Kind of went back to trying to incorporate more traditional animation, going back to my roots, so to speak, with doing more like frame by frame drawn animation to kind of mix things up along with my vector animated sprites. Trying to use more interchangeable parts with the power of get attribute and set attribute along with F strings, with displayables and jumps and call statements, has been all very powerful, with basically having most of the functions in Arcane Dice Wars, what used to be like condition checks, to say like, oh, if the player selected this unit, then it has these properties. Now I could just have the player select a unit, and I could use get and set attribute and these F strings in order to just have those attributes from that unit they selected without having to do like an if else statements checks. So all that really condensed my overly like bad code that was, I don't know, hundreds of lines down to like a couple lines. So very super useful stuff, and started using lists now, not just for inventory but also for randomization, for being able to like kind of check what the player has and being able to like randomly select from those. Still trying to collaborate more and build up my sense of community by participating in feedback quests at the beginning of the year. I forgot to mention Art Fight. I participated very lightly in that, and also joining the Discord. So I wanted to make sure that I included this part as part of my development journey, because I think sometimes we forget or we minimize how important like community is to having sustainable game development. I think is vitally important, because for your mental health, to be honest, because maybe you are the type of like extreme introvert like me who can actually continue to power through these projects for years on end without human contact in the darkness of your basement. I did that with comics for a long time, but it really wasn't good for my mental health. So I think that like building up a sense of community and collaboration is really important too. That should go along with all your like kind of skill building, because it's not something that just falls out of the sky and happens. You don't just join a forum and say, hey, look at this, and then everybody's your friend and now you're all set for your sense of community. Like, this too, at least for me, maybe I'm just awkward, this too takes time, effort, and skills to improve my communication and to even really know myself and to be able to discover like what I'm looking for in a community. Because for a long time when I was younger, I was looking for validation, you know. So when I was in social media like DeviantArt and stuff, I was looking for likes. I was looking for numbers to kind of prove that, I don't know, that what I was doing was valid. And these days, I'm looking for conversations. I'm looking to like get to know people. So like my sphere of, I guess, influence or my name recognition or any of that kind of stuff is like much, much smaller. But I'm so much more happy because it's fulfilling what I really wanted or really needed, which was like an actual connection. So maybe I only get like one comment, but it means a lot to me. And I really focus on that now. And the Discords that I choose to join and the game jams that I choose to participate and the community activities I choose to participate, like, reflect that. But it does take a little bit of trial and error. And it took like kind of like getting to know myself a little bit better in order to like kind of focus that energy in a way that was productive. And it took much like all the skill building, it took a lot of trial and error and failing too. So all this kind of stuff is not just like a line graph going upwards. Like all this is like up and down, up and down, up and down, like fail, 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 success, success, success. Yeah, like it's it's not all just like gaining XP and like it's just leveling up and becoming more powerful. Oh, that's what I love about RPGs, is because progression is just so guaranteed. Alright, well, that's all I've got for this week. Sorry for not showing my face. I'm tired. Hope you all have a great weekend, and I'm excited about jumping into Mission 9. It's gonna be a doozy. Alright. Thanks for tuning in, and again, don't forget to enjoy the process. Bye now.